Welcome back to Kings of the North. Landis, I was just playing my stomach. I'm so excited for the show today. You ever use your stomach as a drum?
Many times, yes.
Yeah. What's better than that? What do people with abs do? You can't drum abs. You need a little something to work with.
I bet you could drum abs if you really wanted to.
No. I justify all of this by saying you can't drum abs. It's our Thursday preview and pick show on Kings of the North. Landis, I have like butterflies in my stomach. I'm so excited about this week. Even though like the gigantic games are in the South, and we talked about them on Wednesday, we will have picks that you and I will make for Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, Texas later in the show. That's not why we're here. We're here for big game breakdowns. Michigan, Illinois, super interesting, I think. And Indiana-Nebraska. We're doing big game breakdowns on both, Landis. In digging into Indiana-Nebraska, it is an even better matchup and game than I thought going in, and I thought going in it was going to be great.
They're like kind of the same team in terms of like how they have succeeded in doing what they do this year. And Indiana is a little better, I think, but I was also kind of struck by just like looking at some of the matchup statistics. Like, oh, they're both good at this. They're both good at this. They're both good at this. Yeah.
So some really good Northern games against each other, led by those two, but Iowa, Michigan State, Oregon coming off a huge win, having to go to Purdue on Friday night is interesting. West Virginia, we need to talk about. They're hosting Kansas State. Kansas State just got over the hump with the big road win at Colorado last week. They have another road test right on top of it. Northwestern and Wisconsin, their offenses both kind of woke up last week, and now they're going to play each other in the last game on the Lakeville for Northwestern, like a bunch of interesting games. So we had the big game breakdowns in the middle of the show. We'll have our fantasy picks for the Dragon statue at the end, but we're going to start with a couple other games. And the one I want to do first, Landis, off the top, is a Thursday night game. And we don't normally go like in order of games, but I just want to make sure nobody misses this because it is Boston College at Virginia Tech at 7:30 Thursday night. And I think I'm calling this something of a gotta have it game for Boston College because to me, these programs are similar right now. They both have interesting quarterbacks. They've had similar seasons, I think. I think it's a pretty even matchup, even though Boston College is about a 7-point underdog on the road in this one. But to me, there's a part of it where if Boston College is going to take a step or be a team to really be excited about, I think you have to go win a game like this. Because the thing about Boston College is they have won at least 6 games in 9 of the last 11 years. So they're like a winning program, like barely winning. They are a sort of classic 7-6 kind of team for the last decade. And I think they want to be more than that. And at times, like they beat Florida State, right? And they hang with Missouri and they kind of look like more than that. They have a great win over Michigan State, right, in the rain. And like there have been times where it's like, man, Bill O'Brien's really got something going at Boston College this year. And if you do, I don't think you can go lose in Blacksburg.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I don't. These are pretty evenly matched teams, I think. So it wouldn't be egregious for BC to go into Blacksburg and lose. But I think to your point of what BC wants to be, what it's trying to build, and also taking advantage of, I think, a little bit of a Virginia Tech team who I can't imagine it's playing with a ton of energy just because like this season has like really gone off the rails for them. They can still salvage something. They're 3-3, but this was a team that I think a few people kind of looked at as a potential ACC dark horse, right? Like coming into the year, it was like if you look beyond the obvious ACC teams, there was a lot of NC State, and there was I feel like a decent amount of Virginia Tech. And that hasn't happened. Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt, and then like it kind of just unraveled on them.
Should have beaten Miami. Should have beaten Miami.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but
I still think that was a catch. I still think that was a catch in the end zone. I think everybody kind of came around on like the review. It was done poorly, but they got the right call. I still don't think it was the right call. I thought the guy caught it.
No, I thought so too. Yeah, so they got kind of boned there, but regardless, like it does seem like a vulnerable team, if only because the season hasn't gone the way they wanted it to go to thus far. So it does feel like an opportunity for Boston College to get what I think would be a pretty decent win for that program on Thursday night.
So Boston College is 4-2. After this, they have Louisville, Syracuse, SMU, North Carolina, Pitt. Like 4 of those 5 teams are pretty darn good. And it's just one of those, again, it's like, okay, like if you lose this one, are you sure you're getting to bowl eligibility? So I don't want to predict a slide at the end of the year or anything. I just like this is one of the more winnable games that Boston College has left. Bad news for them. Amari Jackson, their best corner, is out for the year with a torn ACL. It's been reported that Ashton McShane, a true freshman, will probably get a lot of the snaps there. So that's a tough loss for them for certain. And I think there's been a little bit of discussion with quarterback Thomas Castellanos, how he just kind of doesn't run anymore.
Yes.
Last year, he ran for more than 1,100 yards. He averaged 86 rushing yards per game. This year, he has 103 rushing yards in 5 games. He did miss one with an injury. So he went from 86 yards per game to 21 yards per game. So I wanted to double check on the scrambles. Last year, he averaged 2 scrambles a game. No, last year he averaged 3.2 scrambles a game for 24 yards. This year he averages 2 scrambles a game for 16 yards. Because if it's one of those, hey, he's not running anymore, it's because he's not scrambling. And that's one of those sometimes as a quarterback who does have great running ability develop. Sometimes he wants to be more of a pocket passer. And it's like, hey, don't give up on the thing you do well. It's not really that. They're just not calling runs for him. It's a new coach. It's a new offensive system. So I'm not saying they should run him more because this is a Bill O'Brien drop back, more passing game, right? And he's gone from throwing for 165 yards per game to 197. And they do have Lewis Bond and some good skill guys, right? But I wonder if they could tweak it a little bit and get a few more called runs for him because he's good at it.
I think they need to. He had 125 designed rushing attempts last year. This year he has 23.
Okay.
He had 73 rushing yards and a touchdown against Florida State, and he has 30 rushing yards and no touchdowns in the 4 games since then.
And like, I get it. We're back to the same discussion. I love this discussion that we have. You are what you are. You want to be more. You want to be more nuanced. But if it's not quite working, maybe revert at least to a degree. Is that what we're talking about here?
That's where I am on it. But it's interesting because you meant like Bill O'Brien, I think, has made Thomas Castellanos a better passer. Like this passing attack is better. BC was 111th in passing efficiency last year. It's 17th now. But overall, the offense is worse. Like they are much improved throwing the ball, but the offense is worse. So like I just like, and I like their receivers, right? I'm not saying don't ever throw the ball, but I really do. And maybe the lack of rushing from Thomas Castellanos is injury related. Perhaps he just is not 100% himself to be able to impact the game that way. But when you see like the ineffective rushing from like Kai Robichaux and Trayshawn Ward, who we know are good running backs, and Turbo Richard, we know is a pretty good freshman running back, and that offensive line, I've said it a couple times already this year. Like that offensive line is basically the same offensive line they had last year when they ran the ball really well. Even if Bill O'Brien's down the line projection is being more of a passing oriented offense, and that's fine. He inherited a rushing offense, and I think they are abandoning it a little too much, and it starts with Thomas Castellanos running the ball more.
I completely agree with that, and I think Bill O'Brien is maybe smart enough to like get there in a game like this. Yeah. He sees it too.
If he does, I think BC wins.
Yeah,
but I picked Virginia Tech because I'm not confident that they will do that.
Kai Robichaux, I think, has had some health stuff. Bill O'Brien said this week he should be fine. Again, they have 3 backs who can run it. They have 2 or 3 different receivers I think they believe in. So I just think I would like to see Boston College rise to the challenge here. So I have Boston College doing that 26-23.
I have Virginia Tech 24-20. Virginia Tech won this game last year. Kyron Drones threw for 219 and ran for 135 yards. So that's like BC still has to contend with that. I think maybe Kyron Drones' legs compared to what BC might get out of Castellanos and his running will make a difference. So I have Virginia Tech winning.
Yeah, 48-22. Virginia Tech won it last year. They're 3-3 against each other in their last 6. So again, I think these programs are good measuring sticks, I think, for each other. Hey, Mike, let's do the quick recap. I always forget off the top to recap the records. So let's do that very quickly because I'm just not. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, Bill, but I did beat you last week again.
I'm really bad at this.
So I went 14-3 and you went 12-5. I am now 10 games ahead of you for the season. This is just picking straight up, not against the spread. I'm 132-25. You are 122-35. Tell me if this is true. We had this conversation on Wednesday afternoon we send our picks into our great producer, Mike, and he has to put everything into the graphics and get them ready. And the earlier we get them in, then he doesn't have to stay up until 4:00 in the morning getting it done. And as we finished the Wednesday show, I was like, hey, Bill, let's really try to get Mike the graphics early this week. And you and Mike were both like, Bills are already in. And I was like, well, I haven't even started mine yet. So is it possible that I'm getting my picks in later every week? And in taking longer, I'm doing better. And that you being conscientious about Mike's time and work-life balance are getting thumped by me as I screw Mike every week and keep him up till 3 a.m.
Very possible. Yeah. I do. I almost always get those in before like dinner time on Wednesday. And this week was even earlier, so it could be a real problem for me this week. We'll see.
I almost always get mine in before 11:30 on Thursday. So but I'm just crunching. I'm just crunching so hard. I'm at Panera. I'm drinking 6 coffees. I'm eating the almond croissant, and I'm just really digging into EPA per play on Boston College, Virginia Tech, and really trying to figure this out. So I just want to say congrats to us. I just thought that was a lovely 6-minute breakdown on Boston College.
It's pretty good.
I thought it was pretty good.
Thursday night. Check it out.
Check it out. I'll be watching. Friday night, we just want to alert you to this one too. This is a little weird. This feels a little bit of like, hey, Oregon, thanks for being good at football and popular. Can you go to West Lafayette on a Friday night? Sometimes the networks are just, thank you for being good. Cram it. This is tough. And if they were going anywhere other than a team that is having its defensive-minded head coach call the offensive plays, I would be on the lookout for something here from Oregon. I am not, but isn't this a little weird?
It's very strange. I would likewise be on the lookout, if not for some of the extenuating circumstances here with Purdue. I do think it's interesting nonetheless, because I think Purdue is going to have a really good environment for this, right? It's a Friday night. It's Purdue's Hammer Down Cancer game where they raise money for the Tyler Trent Cancer Center, former the Purdue fan who passed away tragically in 2019. So they do that to honor him in this game. They're wearing all black uniforms. It's going to be a blackout. Oregon's wearing all white. I always like when teams, like one team wears all black and the other team wears all white. Although I think Oregon's helmets might be green or yellow. I don't think white jerseys, white pants, and
good guys, bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where we mention that Purdue does have 3 wins against top 3 teams since 2018.
You're going there.
I just got to get it out there. It is really remarkable. Purdue is 7-11 against top 25 opponents over the last 6 years, and they were an underdog in every game. It's like I don't know that this Purdue is that. I'm not saying like watch out for a spoiler maker situation, but I just think whenever a game like this comes up, we should mention it.
So I've done, obviously, again, people know that we've been covering for Ohio State, not covering for Ohio State, although maybe after covering Ohio State in our careers. And there's just this stuff of, hey, this Big Ten team hasn't beaten Ohio State since 1944. And then Purdue's won 4 of the last 7. And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Here's what I actually think, and I don't know that this is factual, but it's vibes. Sometimes I think Purdue is better off if there's no juice for a game. So the fact that there is juice for a game, sometimes I think you go into West Lafayette for like a noon start, 11 local or something, or I guess it's not 11 local, but like a noon start or a 3:30 start, and there's not a lot of juice, and the highly favored team comes in and is like, ugh, this doesn't feel like anything, and then Purdue steps on your neck. So the idea that this is like everyone wearing black versus everyone wearing white. It's a Friday night. They're jacked up. It's like, I almost would like it better for Purdue if they weren't jacked up, but maybe Oregon still won't be jacked up because they're flying 2,500 miles to play on a Friday. So I will say this line has been 27.5 all week. Mm-hmm. I'm 38-19 Oregon.
Yeah, I'm 38-13.
So we both have Purdue covering here. This is not a betting show. That's Friday morning with T-Shoe on Bets of the North. I kind of like Purdue covering the 27.5 here.
Yeah, I do too. Don't take betting advice from me, but I bet it early in the week because it just felt like a lot given the scenario. And also like given I don't know what to make of Purdue's offense, right? It's a weird situation. What is real and what is not? But Ryan Walters will continue to call plays. They asked him when he decided he was going to call plays, and he said the Thursday morning before the game they played last week against Illinois. But I guess he had been thinking about it prior to that when they got rid of Graham Harrell and they had Jason Simmons call plays the week before. Ryan Walters said he was like learning the lingo of the offense and how he would want to call it and how to simplify things and maybe like what calls work best. And then he just did it last week against Illinois. I actually didn't know this about him. So he was a quarterback. Like before he went to college and played defensive back, he was a quarterback who was like recruited a little bit as a quarterback. So he has an offensive background as a player, just not as a coach. So I guess that this helps make this a little more sense. But he's still calling the plays. Ryan Brown is going to start a quarterback. He played last week for an injured Hudson Card. Hudson Card status, I guess, is still up in the air. But Ryan Walters said with the way Ryan Brown played, it would be unfair not to start him in this game after he had 297 passing and 117 rushing with 3 touchdowns last week. So like there's more for Oregon to prepare for here, right? Because Ryan Brown gives you the quarterback run game. I do think that gives Purdue potentially a chance to score a little more in this game, but I don't know that Purdue's going to stop Oregon all that much because the other part of the conversation is that Purdue's defense is also bad. And now it's defensive-minded head coach is calling the offense. So I don't know that Purdue's going to put up a whole lot of resistance to Oregon's offense. I guess Oregon could be sleepy to start the game, but I think eventually Oregon will figure it out.
And I don't think any of this is not believing in Oregon or a criticism of Oregon. It is a very tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
So a day early on the other side of the country, coming off a late night, super emotional, huge win. This is as natural of a letdown as you will find. That's all this is from Oregon. But also, like, Oregon's not exactly dropping 70 on people so far this year. Correct. You know what I mean? So that you and I are both, again, here we are back with the Doug and Bill show of picking basically the exact same score. We're both on 38 with Oregon. And then in a world where it's like you're getting 27 and a half, it's like, all right, can Purdue score 12? I don't know. Based on what they did last week when they didn't punt on their final 8 possessions against Illinois, it's like, yeah, I think maybe they can get 3 scores against Oregon, which again is not saying that Oregon has a bad defense. It's that Purdue has a little bit of a pulse. And I think Oregon, like, literally, it's not even like emotionally, I think they literally might be sleepy, right? Travel is hard.
Yeah, no, it is. It is this. And when it's, I think you've been a little more on the travel stuff than I have been. But when it's a day early too, when you're losing the whole day of preparation and rest, I certainly think about it more.
And honestly, like, the moments for a team, for a program, for a fan base, for players that their entire existence has been on the West Coast, it does not get any more real of, hey, we're in a conference with a bunch of Midwest teams now than playing on a Friday night in West Lafayette.
This is Oregon's first trip east, right? Am I mistaken?
I think that's right, because this is the whole thing. They have 3 and their final 6 that they have, right? Wisconsin and Michigan yet to come, but this is the first of that 3-pack because the whole thing was they played their whole first half of the season on the West Coast, either in Oregon or in California. So like they did not have to face this yet, and now it's real. Now it's real, and I just think it might be a little weird. So I think Oregon can compete in the way that the 83rd best team in the country can compete with the 2nd best team in the country, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Right. This might be the most competitive 2 versus 83 game you'll ever see. All right. Let's go to my least favorite thing, which is talking about Oklahoma State. Here's the saving grace. I don't think Alan Bowman's going to play. So we have talked about that. We are sick of talking about Oklahoma State because we did it when they played Utah. We did it when they played West Virginia. We did it when they played Kansas State. And they're not very good. And we're tired of talking about 7th-year quarterback Alan Bowman, who's not hurt, but did lose his job. So Garrett Rangel is likely going to start at quarterback. He's played 12 games in his career so far, 4 starts, 4 in garbage time, and 4 where he kind of came in for real in relief. He's a 51% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he's the guy they're going to.
Yeah.
He's the answer. He's the solution. So Oklahoma State lost to Utah 22-19. They lost to Kansas State 42-20. They lost to West Virginia 38-14. Like, Oklahoma State's not good. BYU is good. BYU is about a 10-point favorite. It's at BYU. It's on Friday night at 10:15. This is the one to watch after you get home from the high school games. It'll be there sitting for you. I don't know. You can knock me over with a feather if Oklahoma State is at all competitive in this, because I think BYU is going to BYU them.
BYU at home at night, right? Like, I think that's all that needs to be said here. I think Oklahoma State is quite bad. Oklahoma State, in the 3 losses, it's the last 3 games that it's lost, has surrendered 938 rushing yards in three games. So I would like to see BYU run the ball here a little bit, right? We mentioned during the week that LJ Martin and Hinckley Rapati both came back last week, and I thought BYU probably ran it the best it has run the ball all year. Mixing a little Jake Retzlaff in his legs, and I would like to see BYU put up like I don't know, 250 rushing in this game, because it feels like it should be able to.
Hey, Mike, I don't know if we have it. You can jump in if you're there. Do we have the TikTok, the BYU TikTok? Maybe not.
We do. Give me 1 second.
Okay. So I want to run the BYU TikTok, and it is going to get weird here in a second. Okay. So everybody just take this in. BYU put this out on TikTok with their Cougar mascot. So just be ready. All right, we're in the club now at BYU. Here's why we played that, okay? My daughter sent that to me from France. All right, ready? Here's the deal. The BYU mascot can get it. Like, apparently, like, everyone agrees, the BYU mascot is the hottest mascot that I've ever seen. And a lot of mascots have big, goofy heads and like oversized faces and weird chins. The BYU mascot has a normal sized cougar head and can really dance and is like, I am vibing with this. And so I don't know, man. Like, and that mascot's 6-0. Can you imagine the BYU mascot hitting the clubs at night, being 6-0, dancing and looking like that? My God, I want to be that mascot.
Yeah, I didn't know that people found the BYU mascot attractive. Might have something to do with like repressed energies out there in Provo. Maybe.
I'll tell you what, it might just be me and my daughter, because I was like, this is the kind of conversation we have. She sent it to me. I was like, wow. She was like, you should put it on the show. I said, the BYU mascot can get it. And she's like, yeah, everybody's saying that. So that's my research on that. But take that. And by the way, and then the Oklahoma State mascot is a cowboy with a head this big and the creepiest mustache you've ever seen. And it's like the BYU Cougars over here doing this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And in the corner, the Oklahoma State Cowboy is just like twirling his mustache, being the creepiest dude you've ever met. It's like, could you please escort this cowboy out of the club? He's looking at me weird. Okay. BYU is so good. That's where we are with that. I just don't think it's close. 31-16 for me, BYU.
I have BYU winning 38-10.
Okay. Kansas State, West Virginia. This is real. We talked about it. I thought Ryan Gilbert, who we had on as a guest this week, who covers Kansas State for GoPowerCat.com, did a really good job, just like how big of a deal it was for Kansas State to get that road win at Colorado last week. And then it's like, congratulations. Do you want to go to desperate West Virginia? And here they are.
Here they are. It's another night game in Morgantown, and Neil Brown just doing his part to get the folks out there fired up for a big game. Like, let's run that clip of the West Virginia coach.
Yeah, you would know the vibe more than I would, just because I'm not on social media. I get that they want to win, but what I would say is, did they have a good time? You know what I mean? Like, did they enjoy it? It was pretty good atmosphere. You know, I'm assuming they probably had a pretty good time tailgating. So if they're in the deal for enjoyment, then I would come back, because I looked at the weather. It's going to be nice again. It's a night game, and we need them to provide a home field advantage. We need them. I get they're frustrated that we didn't win. You know, we've played a tough schedule. You know, everybody that's beat us hasn't lost. All right, but that's no excuse. That's just the truth. And the games in our league are going to come down to the fourth quarter, and I don't think this one on Saturday is going to be any different. So we need them to help us. I do get their frustration, but I don't think it's, when you watch our product, I don't think the product is something that they should be, other than the outcome. Like, our kids play hard. That was a really physical football game on Saturday. There's a lot of West Virginia kids out there spilling it out. And so there was clear strength, clear physicality. It was an entertaining football game. If you're a football fan, you're just watching that, it's pretty entertaining. We just didn't play well enough to win. And so I hope with that in mind, they would come back for another entertaining game that hopefully we can play better at the end and win.
That was the answer to the question, by the way, which wasn't included in the clip, which was, what is your message to fans after West Virginia lost another game at home? It was 14-10 going into the fourth quarter, and West Virginia did not find a way to win. And Neil Brown's answer was, yeah, but you had fun, right?
So he needed the BYU mascot to come in there and like lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah. So I completely agree with every single word he said. He can't say it. Right. He's not wrong. Yeah. He's not wrong. But he can't say it.
Right.
They've lost to Penn State, Pitt, and Iowa State. He can't say it. And now they're getting Kansas State. So, like, he can't say it. And my guys, Brandon and Jeremy Phoenix from the Raspy Voice Kids, who are that's how I keep a pulse on West Virginia fans and the fan base, did not like that. Oh, they did not like that. That went over like a lead balloon. And he set his own seat on fire with that comment.
Yeah. It was already pretty hot, but he doused it with some gasoline and decided to throw a match down.
So, but I also think they could win this game. Like, to his point,
I think so too. Yeah,
they're only they're Kansas State's only favored by 3. Kansas State, who I think is really good, it's Saturday night at 7:30. So, like, I don't know, man.
Neil Brown is 3-16 against top 25 teams at West Virginia and has lost his last 8. So do with that information what you will.
You were like, here's another can of kerosene, Neil.
I'm just like,
that is not a good record.
I agree with you that I like West Virginia is a good enough team to win this game, and Avery Johnson has a couple of picks in him, I think, that could help West Virginia win this game if he decides to play that way, right? So I think it's a somewhat even matchup if West Virginia can play its best game. And I actually didn't look at the margins in those top 25 games, but even like I thought West Virginia played okay last week against Iowa State. It just didn't play well in the fourth quarter and lost the game. Yeah. So if it can play better in the fourth quarter here, then I think it has a chance. I do think that maybe I think West Virginia might be able to run the ball a little bit on Kansas State. Kansas State has a really good rushing defense, so I'm not trying to say that they're bad, but the 3-headed monster that West Virginia has in its backfield, I think, can probably run the ball against most teams that it plays. But it didn't run the ball last week against Iowa State, and that's part of the reason why it lost the game. So it has to get that going here, and if it does, I think it can win. I just don't know that it will be quite good enough. Like Avery Johnson's playing way better than Garrett Green right now. And for me, that's kind of what it comes down to. And I think both these teams have secondary problems or concerns, maybe might be the right way to say it. So perhaps there's an opportunity for both quarterbacks to throw it a little bit. But if that's the case, then I think I believe in Avery Johnson doing that a little more than I do Garrett Green right now.
I was super tempted to pick West Virginia here. I almost did. Part of the reason I didn't is because all the other things I've been saying about the Big 12, which is Farmageddon, Ohio State, Iowa State, Kansas State. Both teams could have a spot in the Big 12 title game on the line. I think Kansas State still might be the best team in the Big 12. I've been saying things like that a lot. And if they lose at West Virginia for their second Big 12 loss, then a lot of those things aren't true anymore. But emotion that they still aren't a like totally proven road team, right? That they found a way to win against Colorado last week, but also, they did it on a 50-yard pass that they executed perfectly. But I'm just saying, like, Ryan Gilbert thought it was maybe transformative for them. Okay, now they're going to take this confidence on the road. But I'm not 1,000% sure of that. And I think it is potentially a really tough spot. So I backdoored myself and I picked Kansas State 38-20. That way West Virginia would cover. as a 3-point dog. So, but I think it's close, brother.
Yeah, so do I. I have a field goal game. It was 3.5. I might have changed by this point.
Okay.
So the score that I picked was when the spread was still 3.5. So I had a West Virginia cover as well. Or no, I guess I don't have a 4-point game.
No.
I can't do
Yeah.
that. Sorry.
Both close. Both close.
Yeah,
One's
both close. 31-27 for me. Watch Wyatt Milam against Brendan Mott. West Virginia offensive tackle against Kansas State defensive end. Best tackle in the North against the guy who leads the Big 12 in sacks. Should be pretty fun.
Oh, let's do that. Okay. And have fun doing it, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah, enjoy yourself. Yeah.
We can say it. You can't say it. That's what I want to tell you. Or say it for you. We'll say it for you. We'll help. We'll try to help these fans enjoy their teams. You know, it's not like West Virginia's. It's not on fire. They're not incompetent. They've played good games and lost. They were incompetent in the opener against Penn State, and they blew it. Okay, maybe it's been a kind of incompetent, but anyway, like I still think they have good players.
Yeah.
And by the way, having been to West Virginia for the first time, it is a freaking hoot there. That's the problem. It is fun. It is a great tailgating scene, and they have a great home schedule this year, right? It's just not fun if you lose all the home games. So that's the part of it. Oh, what was the thing we missed? Winning. All right, Iowa at Michigan State. I think Iowa's going to blow them out, but Michigan State thinks maybe they figured something out in the off week. Michigan State is really bad in the red zone. They have a 38% touchdown rate in the red zone. That's 128th in the country. 21 trips to the red zone, 8 touchdowns, 6 field goals, 7 empty trips. I think Michigan State is kind of like a worse version of Washington, which can move the ball, shoot itself in the foot. And when Iowa played Washington last week, they kind of smothered them. 2 turnovers, 3 stops on downs, beat them by whatever it was, 24. I don't really see how this is like super competitive because I don't think Michigan State's going to fix the Aiden Childs turnover issues instantaneously. In the bye week, they kind of took some time off to recoup and recover. According to reports, they held like 1 practice on the bye week. So like maybe that helped, and they've played some close games. I just think the Iowa defense is still really good, and the offense is slowly ticking upward. The only team that has stopped Caleb Johnson in the run game is Ohio State. I don't think Michigan State's going to stop them. And so Addison Ostrenga, they're really good. Number 2 tight end is still going to be out. That's tough. Starting left guard Bo Stevens is probably going to be out this week for Iowa, according to Kirk Ferentz. But Hayden Large has been hurt, but he could be back this week. Their H-back. I think this is not close. I have 31-10 Iowa. I think this is, if Michigan State thinks it can improve on offense, I don't think the Iowa defense is the team you get healthy against.
I am not super confident that Michigan State will show us much of anything different on offense. Michigan State's run defense has been okay this year. Like I actually thought Michigan State did a decent job against Ohio State's rushing attack.
Okay.
It has not given up a lot of explosive rushing plays, which is I think what Iowa needs if it's going to put a 30 up on the board. Only 4 runs of 20 plus yards allowed by Michigan State's defense this year. So I'm kind of thinking they don't let Caleb Johnson go wild. I still think Iowa wins the game. Maybe there's a defensive score in there because of the Aiden Childs turnover issues. But I think there are 2 things here. So there's Michigan State has at times looked like a pretty good run defense. And also, if Aiden Childs is not turning the ball over, he can throw it deep. They can hit you with the big ball down the field. And they have 2 receivers that you have to worry about with Nick Marsh and Montori Foster, perhaps even a third. Was it Jaron Glover?
Yep.
And I still don't know about the other spots in the secondary for Iowa aside from Jamari Harris. Like it is a far lesser version of what I wondered when Iowa played Ohio State, which is like, can you cover all of the receivers? And I don't know, like Iowa's still giving up big passing plays. So it's a very narrow path, I think, for Michigan State to make this a game. Big passing plays, stop the run, and like that's kind of the only way they can do it. But I don't think it's impossible. I'm not picking Michigan State to win, but I am wondering if they can make it a game. So I have Iowa winning 20-13, but if I'm wrong about the run defense and Caleb Johnson does get loose, and I think it's certainly more like your score, but I think it'll be Michigan State offensive struggle, but perhaps not as easy for Iowa to hit the big runs that it usually hits.
So I have Iowa 31-10, and just by the way, on alert for an Iowa run here. They have the losses to Iowa State and Ohio State, but after this game, Northwestern at home, Wisconsin at home, at UCLA, at Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes you into the Black Friday game against Nebraska. So I'm just saying, like, as we search for teams and who's going to be this and who's the fourth team in the Big Ten, and if Iowa does this, a 10-2 Iowa with losses to two playoff teams, Iowa State and Ohio State, is not a bad resume, but it starts here. So there, I mean, you can't get ahead of yourself. I think for whatever reason, there's some underestimation of Iowa still. So because if they wouldn't have lost the Iowa State game, and then you just play Ohio State, and Ohio State does that to a lot of people. So anyway, I am kind of bullish still. Like, bullish means good, bearish means bad, right? Is that right?
That is correct.
I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate using that phrase. I can't.
I just think I'm not sure. I'm not attempting to underestimate Iowa. They can still only do one thing on offense, right?
Yes.
And we've seen what it looks like if a team can take that away. And I'm not like Michigan State's defense is not as good as Ohio State's defense. That's not what I'm saying. But if the one thing Michigan State seems to be good at is taking away Caleb Johnson, then maybe that's a way. And like Iowa State took away Caleb Johnson in the second half of that game, right? So if you have the pieces to do it, you can definitely slow down Iowa and keep the score, I think, pretty low.
Okay. One more in this segment. Wisconsin at Northwestern. It's a noon start on Saturday. Wisconsin is about a touchdown favorite. Again, this is the last game in Northwestern's temporary stadium. Their last two home games will be at Wrigley Field. What do you think of this one, Landis?
I'm wondering how high scoring it might be. Wisconsin 94-13 its last two games against Purdue and Rutgers, and Northwestern 61 points in its last two games, right? Not quite a 94.
Yeah.
But I think maybe starting to figure some stuff out with Jack Lausch at quarterback, right? Both of these teams seem to be embracing throwing the ball down the field a little more. And I think Braden Locke has certainly been more effective doing that than Jack Lausch has been. But I thought there were a couple of pretty impressive throws on the field for Jack Lausch last week against Maryland. So I think both these defenses are fine, but maybe not awesome. So maybe there's some opportunities for both these teams to move the ball a little bit. So I think maybe contrary to what people would have assumed coming into this season, that Wisconsin Northwestern gets a little high scoring.
There are a couple teams in breaking down these games this week that have made quarterback changes that are significant enough that I think you almost have to throw out to a large degree the previous offensive performances with the other quarterback. It's going to pop up with Houston a little bit later. I think it's possible with Oklahoma State, although I'm not encouraged about Oklahoma State. But I think Northwestern is a little bit of this to some degree, that they just, they lost that Duke game and then they get away from Mike Wright. And then Jack Lausch had not played much and it took him some time. But now these last two games, it's like, oh, what happened? It's like, well, Jack Lausch is figuring out how to play quarterback and Zach Lujan is figuring out how to use him. And now all of a sudden their offense is functional in a way that it wasn't in the first four games. So that matters. So it's like sometimes with the data or whatever, even like for TSU, like if you're really going by data here, I think there's some Northwestern data that you would throw out. And honestly, I think Wisconsin, the same thing. After the Tyler Van Dyke injury, you get Braden Locke in there. It takes a little bit of time. Ches Malusi is out for the year. They have to reset some stuff. But I think the data the last 2 weeks on this team is the real data. And so that data, as you just said, means points.
Yeah. I guess this will be a nice opportunity to see, I think, to get a little more reliable data on Wisconsin, right? Because Purdue's defense, as we said, is pretty bad. And then, as we discussed earlier in the week, it did what it did against Rutgers, with Rutgers for parts of the game missing its five best defensive players. So Northwestern is I think, better and healthier than both those teams on defense right now. So it's not been great against the pass, but it has been good against the run. I just think if Wisconsin keeps doing what it's done the last 2 weeks on offense, again in this game, I will be much more of a believer in their kind of upward trajectory.
I have Wisconsin 27-21.
I have Wisconsin 35-28.
This isn't a betting show, but the total is 41.5. So I am over that, and Landis is way over that, if that matters to you.
Should be a nice day on the lake. I don't think we're getting any wind. I think the conditions will be good for throwing the pigskin.
Yeah. Weather matters. All right. Quick break. When we come back, it's time for the big game breakdowns. First, Michigan, Illinois. Second, Indiana, Nebraska. All that next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North. We take little breaks just to give ourselves a second to collect ourselves, take a drink. I tried to sneeze in the break and it wouldn't come out, but it's sitting in there. So everybody's warned. I apologize.
Okay.
What do you do? It's like it's just sitting there, and I couldn't get it out in 33 seconds. Michigan at Illinois. This is our first big game breakdown. Saturday, 3:30. Michigan is about a field goal favorite, 3.5. This is part of the spectacular centennial of Memorial Stadium for the Illinois Fighting Illini. It actually opened like 101 years ago, but they dedicated it in 1924. So there's a lot of stuff around this. And what's happening in this game is this is like the Red Grange game. Scott Docterman, who's been on the show, actually wrote a big story about it, about Red Grange and what he meant to college football for the Athletic. I would direct anybody towards that because Scott's super good at what he does. But this game is being played 100 years and a day after the Red Grange 6-touchdown performance against a Michigan team who had been on a 20-game unbeaten streak on October 18th, 1924. He had more than 400 total yards of offense. Illinois won 39-14. And again, he scored 6 touchdowns, including returning the opening kickoff, 95 yards for a touchdown. So they are going Red Grange crazy in this game, Landis, including wearing Red Grange uniforms for Illinois that are going to be, their helmets are going to be spray painted to look like leather helmets. So when you tune into this game, and I suggest you do, it's going to be wild. I think it's going to be fun. Illinois hasn't beaten Michigan since 2009.
Michigan's going to say since 1924.
They cursed. It was the Red Grange curse. They haven't won in 100 years. Since 2009, they haven't played a ton. So it's a 6-game winning streak for Michigan. But like super fun. I'm so excited that Illinois is doing stuff like this. It's going to be a festival of football in Champaign-Urbana. So like, let's go, man.
So do I have this right that Illinois AD Josh Whitman asked the Big Ten to put Michigan on its home schedule this year so that it could honor Red Grange and do this dedication somewhat around the time of that game against Michigan 100 years ago? I believe that is the case. Like, it's not like bring us Michigan, we're going to beat them kind of thing, but it was like, we want to do this right and have the team in here that was part of that historical moment in Illinois football.
Well, then if so, well done by him. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, but there's also a lot of football here, right? So there's a lot of festivity and there's a lot of football. And the question is Michigan back? So we're going to start with the Michigan offense versus the Illinois defense. Just to reset what has been happening with the Michigan offense, in case anybody forgot it. In adjusted EPA per dropback, which is when you call a passing play, how successful and efficient are you play to play? Michigan is 131st in the country. The only teams that have been less successful on a regular basis when they call a passing play are Wyoming, Air Force, and Buffalo. That's how bad it's been. Last year, Michigan was 13th in this category. Their offense is a Brian Ferentz offense. Last year, with Brian Ferentz running the show, Iowa was last in this. That's what Michigan has been in the first half of the year. But here comes Jack Tuttle. They call him Uncle Jack, apparently. That's what Sharon Moore said, because when you're in your 7th year, everybody calls you Uncle. He kind of gave him a little boost in their Washington loss. He came in relief of Alex Orji in that game, was 10 of 18 for 98 yards, a touchdown and a pick. They scored 17 points on their first 3 drives. And then it was like, oh, by the way, after that, their offense stunk again. But like they're taking that as the spark, Landis. So they've had an off week, new quarterback, also new offensive line. And these have been the 2 biggest problems for Michigan. Miles Hinton, the left tackle, has been hurt. He should be back. Josh Preeb at left guard, he's been pretty good. He should be good to go. Dominic Jadis has been the center, but Greg Crippen has been filling in for him at times. Jadis was hurt for the last game. Crippen played. Crippen's probably taken that starting job. So the center is different. Right guard, Giovanni El Hadi is fine. And then at right tackle, Evan Link, who's a second-year player, he is number 146 out of 167 Power 4 tackles in PFF grade. He's a second-year player who has not played that well. When Miles Hinton was hurt in the last game, Jeff Percy, who's a 5th-year guy, played left tackle. He's probably going to take the right tackle job now. Now, he didn't grade out great either, but it's just a more veteran guy. So anyway, you're getting healthy at left tackle. You're changing guys at center and right tackle, and you're changing guys at quarterback. I don't know, Landis. It's not a guarantee that it's going to work, but at least it's not the same because what it's been so far has been terrible.
Yeah, it's not. I think it'll be better, right? It feels a little similar to the Oregon situation where they were doing a little bit of searching to figure out what the best 5 were going to be, and like through like injury and trying to figure out how to move some pieces around. I think they have probably settled on what their best 5 are. Now, there's still a question of what ultimately the ceiling is of that group, but I definitely think that Michigan stands to be better along the offensive line moving forward than it has been these first couple of games, right? So I don't think it'll be quite the same Michigan offensive line that we're used to seeing, but good enough, better, I think is a fine place for Michigan to be given how the season kind of started for that position group.
And when Jack Tuttle played in the Washington game, he'd had 3 days of practice because he'd been hurt for basically the entire season before that. Now he's had 2 more weeks of practice.
Yeah.
So he should probably be better too. So maybe it's grasping at straws here, but I don't know that it is. And then as we noted for the Illinois defense, they did not stop Purdue on the last 8 drives in that game where they had a 27-3 lead and Purdue came back and forced overtime. There are some run defense questions about Illinois. They give up 4.54 yards per carry. That's 96th in the nation. That's not very good. Guess what Michigan can do? Run the ball with Kalel Mullings. Devin Mockabee ran 11 times for 102 yards for Purdue in that last game. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton for Penn State against Illinois ran 34 times for 196 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. So like they've given it up to some running backs. And now Kalel Mullings is a truck and Donovan Edwards is the sidecar. And I don't know, man. Xavier Scott, who was a first-team All-North pick for us, missed the Purdue game. He should be back. But that's in the secondary. Their secondary is pretty good. This is really about Michigan maybe getting better on the offensive line, maybe getting better at quarterback. And then the only thing that Michigan's been able to do, which is run the ball a little bit. Illinois has not been great at stopping. I think this very well could be the best offensive performance from Michigan that we have seen so far this year, maybe by far.
I agree with that. Because I think Michigan will be much better off with Jack Tuttle at quarterback.
Yeah.
But even if he wasn't playing this week, I think I'd still feel okay about Michigan's offense in this game because it has run the ball so well and done so explosively too, right? So I think perhaps there would have been enough there to win this game just because of how suspect Illinois' run defense has been at times anyway. But now you add Jack Tuttle on top of that, who I actually think will probably run a little bit too. He did some of that against Washington, so it's not like the quarterback run game is dead because Alex Orji is no longer this team's quarterback. And frankly, it wasn't all that effective when he was the quarterback. So I think that's still part of the plan here. I think Tuttle is a better passer than Orji, certainly, and I guess the hope is that he is far less turnover prone than Davis Warren was.
Yeah. Yep.
Josh Preeb said that Jack Tuttle has a calming presence for the offense, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. Like, he's just been around forever. It is a little interesting to me that, like, the quote unquote savior of Michigan's offense is going to be a journeyman quarterback who's now on his third program and has only ever started 5 games, I think, in his career, and hasn't started one since November of 2022. So I do think we need to maybe pull back a little bit on how transformative this could end up being for Michigan, but it was so bad that even honestly slightly below average quarterback play, I think would be a tremendous step forward for Michigan, right?
What if they go from 131st when they drop back to 85th?
Yeah.
That is a huge leap, and it's still below average. So, like, again, that's what we're talking about. It really is the Iowa discussion. The Iowa passing game, the Iowa offense doesn't have to be good. It just has to be not the worst. And that's what Iowa's done this year. Okay. Michigan passing game doesn't have to be good. It just has to be not literally the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo, Wyoming, Air Force, literally. So that's what we're asking. It's the worst in the Power 4. So be 50th out of 68 instead of 68th. And what that might look like, man, I don't know. So I'm very interested in seeing what this Michigan offense looks like in this game. Let's go to the other side. Illinois offense, Michigan defense, because we know Michigan has been good on defense, right?
Michigan has been good on defense, and there are a couple of things at play here. Right? Illinois has not run the ball at all this year, and Caden Fagan didn't play last week. It seems like he's probably not going to play this week. So I am almost just like writing that off for Illinois.
Okay.
Because I just figure whatever Illinois tries to do running the ball, Michigan's going to stop it. Can Illinois protect Luke Altmaier? Because if it can, I do think you can throw on Michigan a little bit. If you don't throw to Will Johnson's side of the field, which works out nicely for Illinois because it has more than one good receiver.
They do.
Washington really picked on Jair Hill and Zeke Berry. So Jair Hill is the corner opposite Will Johnson, and Zeke Berry is the new nickel that has played this year for Michigan. Those two defensive players against Washington. 17 targets, 15 receptions, 182 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, we've talked about the other corner spot at times looking a little ripe for the picking. I think especially in that Texas game, it showed up, and I had thought Jair Hill had started to play a little better. And then I guess maybe there was some regression there against Washington. But it really feels more to me like teams have pinpointed that nickel slot position to really try to attack Michigan throwing the ball. Neither Pat Bryant nor Zachary Franklin have played a ton in the slot for Illinois. Pat Bryant has played a little more. I'm wondering if we might see Illinois maybe move those guys around a little bit to try to find those advantageous matchups. And if Luke Altmaier, who was pressured on 60% of his dropbacks against Penn State, and Illinois didn't throw the ball well in that game, like aside from its opening drive, he's good. He's an effective quarterback when he has time to throw the ball down the field, right? So that is where Illinois, I think, could win this game if the new tackles in Illinois, like J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, can block. Josiah Stort, who was named the captain this week. Derek Moore, who did not play against Washington, might be back. So it's a tall task to block those guys. I'm not saying it's easy. The more problematic spots for Illinois' offensive line have been like the interior, specifically, I think it's the right guard spot, which is not, you don't want to have interior offensive line issues when you're trying to block Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Rayshon Benny. So I probably would favor, I would favor Michigan's defensive line in that matchup. But even with that, I think there could be still some opportunities for explosive passing plays for Illinois, that if this is a close game and Michigan's offense is like not rocking and rolling and unstoppable, that could be the pathway for Illinois to win it.
And if Will Rogers, Denzel Boston, and Giles Jackson could do it for Washington, it's not unreasonable to think that Luke Altmaier, Zachary Franklin, and Pat Bryant could do it for Illinois. That's a pretty similar trio, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's interesting. And Will Johnson should be okay, right?
Yeah,
he should be playing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know they're just like Will Johnson and Xavier Scott are both first team All North secondary members, and like we would like to see both of them healthy and playing in this game. So that's certainly a big deal. This is like, doesn't this feel huge for Illinois? Like Red Grange,
it is a moment.
Yeah. Do you think they rise to it?
I think potentially they do, because like when Illinois played Kansas earlier in the year, we were talking a lot about how Illinois has not played a lot of games where it was like when a ranked team came in there, and I think the Penn State game was like its first ranked versus ranked game in a while. So now it has a win against what was then a ranked team that was like kind of a big moment against Kansas. It didn't win against Penn State, but it was a close game. Like it kind of hung with Penn State on the road. So I'm wondering if there were lessons learned there where like here comes another moment for Illinois, and it is more prepared to meet it maybe than it was when it played Penn State. And also Penn State's better than Michigan.
And Illinois did go on the road and win at Nebraska. So like they've been tested. They've played some real games here. So who you picking?
I'm going to pick Michigan.
Okay.
24-21. I think Michigan's run game will be too much for Illinois. So I'm actually not. I want to see what the Jack Tuttle stuff looks like, right? I'm actually quite excited to see what Michigan does there with this another quarterback change. But I just think this is more about the run game, and Illinois hasn't shown an ability to stop it. So Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards, and the defense win the game for Michigan.
24-17 Michigan for me. So we picked basically the same score. I outlined this to start the Wednesday show, how I think Wisconsin, Cincinnati, and Michigan are three teams that with the schedules they have left are going to play good teams. And I don't know, I wouldn't put any of those three teams in the playoff, and even though all of them only have 2 losses and still would be in that mix. But I think they have a chance to beat somebody and mess something up for other people. It matters so much if Michigan gets it together, because a Michigan team that has gotten it together to some degree on offense then becomes super interesting against Oregon and Ohio State, and here we go, as opposed to like, oh, okay, they have a good defense, but they literally can't throw the ball. So super meaningful game in its own right, but super meaningful for the rest of the year, what this looks like. Michigan versus Illinois, and we're both picking the Wolverines. And if they don't, and it's like, if this is like, hey, we tried to do offensive line, hey, we tried Jack Tuttle, and they still stink, then I'm out. Then it's over.
Yeah.
Then we're on 5-7 watch, right? Then it's like, okay, it's a lost season. Go put on your merch from last year. We get it. Stuff happens, and it's over. This is potentially a last gasp. If they can't put together a functional offense at Illinois, then it's not going to be like when they host Oregon, like, the Ducks got to be maybe now. No, because you just had the bye. You've made all the switches you can make. It's now or never. So watch this game, because it's really going to, I think, be interesting in that way. All right. Other big game breakdown is Nebraska at Indiana. This is a noon start on Saturday. Nebraska, isn't this weird? Nebraska's like a touchdown favorite at Indiana. Do you think that's weird?
No, that's not right, is it?
Is it? Do I have it backwards?
Indiana's got to be favored in this game.
Oh, sorry. Did I have it wrong? Oh, let me double check it. Indiana's favored? Actually, that would make sense if they were. Oh, yeah. Nebraska's getting 6.5.
Okay.
Isn't this completely normal, Bill? That Nebraska is getting the exact amount right of... Sorry. Sometimes a minus or a plus really matters. Pay attention to math.
It does.
Doug has minus 6.5 when it's actually plus 6.5. 23rd meeting. Nebraska joined the Big Ten in 2011. This is just the 4th time they've met since Nebraska joined the Big Ten. So let's start with, I don't know, they're not wearing, Indiana's not wearing gunny sacks or anything, right? They aren't wearing what they wore 100 years ago. This is just normal uniforms.
No, I want to know when they're going to wear the Kurt Signetti Marlboro uniforms. That when that happens, Indiana's feeling pretty confident.
Yeah. They're going to glue candy cigarettes to everybody's face mask. All right. You talk, I'll enjoy it. Nebraska offense versus Indiana defense.
Yeah, so Nebraska's only played one road game, and it was at Purdue. So this will be a different test for Dylan Raiola, who is coming off of what is, I think, unquestionably the worst game of his season. It was sort of like the reminder that he is a freshman, right? When they played at against Rutgers last week, there was some wind, I guess, that may have impacted throwing the ball some, but he was 48% completions for 134 yards and an interception in that game that Nebraska won by a touchdown and perhaps should have at least played for overtime, and who knows what would have happened in that game. So we need to see a Dylan Raiola bounce back spot here. I don't know where the deficiency is in Indiana's defense, right? It's part of they've played really well, but they've not played a team that is like super potent on offense. Like Maryland, I guess, is the best offense that Indiana has faced, and Maryland did some stuff, but it also got 4 turnovers in that game. So it didn't score off those turnovers, but at least got the ball 4 extra times than it was expecting to. Like, I think the defensive line's good. I think the secondary is good. The one thing that kind of stood out to me as I was just like looking through some stuff to try to figure out, okay, like where is there a vulnerability that we're not yet aware of? It could be perhaps targeting the linebackers in coverage. Now, that's probably true of a lot of teams, right? But it was the one thing that kind of stuck out to me. I was just looking through some stuff. So I'm looking to see whether or not Nebraska might want to target its tight end Thomas Fedoni a little more in this game. Ramir Johnson, who's the number 2 running back for Nebraska, is 4th on the team in targets with 18. He has 16 receptions for 146 yards and a touchdown. So maybe this could be a spot for him to step up and be more involved as a pass catcher against Indiana's defense. But I just don't know that I look like, oh yeah, like that. Isolate that and attack that. And you'll have opportunities against Indiana's team. I think aside from Nebraska just having more talent than Indiana has seen thus far, I don't know if there's like a schematic / positional advantage for Nebraska's offense, unless maybe that linebacker spot is a little more susceptible against the pass than even I'm imagining based off some of the numbers. So like I think like Nebraska's offensive line I think is pretty good. I think there's some physicality there that Indiana hasn't quite seen yet. So it'll be a real like stress test, I guess, of all the things that have looked really good for Indiana's defense, just against better competition, I think, than it has seen thus far. But I think like man-to-man personnel-wise, Indiana does seem to stack up pretty well here based off what it's done so far this year.
We talked about this with Zach Carpenter on our Tuesday show, the beat writer who covers the Cornhuskers. He said he doesn't think that they're like holding Dylan Raiola back at all, that like we've seen it. You said he's coming off his worst game. Like, is there anything, have we seen what we're going to see? Is there a potential burgeoning explosion sitting inside Nebraska's offense right now? Where do you think they are?
I mean, there could be. I thought Dylan Raiola played really well against Illinois. Like that was a big game, and I was really impressed with how he handled that moment. This is another big game, and it's on the road, and it's like I actually don't know what Memorial Stadium is like for a big game because they don't play them. Like this crowd is going to be juiced up. It's sold out. Like Kurt Signetti, I think, is going to get what he's wanted all year from his fan base. But even like all that being said, I have no idea what kind of advantage that might provide for Indiana, just because Indiana's like never been in this position before. Yeah. So I think there's an opportunity for a good Dylan Raiola game here that could lead Nebraska to a win. I guess I'm curious about Indiana like trying to heat him up a little bit, and if they get after him, how does he respond? Like I said, Nebraska's offensive line has been decent at times. They're pretty good at right tackle. They are less good at left tackle, where Gunnar Gatula has been playing for Turner Corcoran. Like I think that could be a spot that Indiana tries to attack with. It has a good defensive line. Mikal Kamara has been one of the better pass rushers in the North and also in the country this year. So it could be, it's like, oh, they can't block that guy. And that maybe stifles anything that Nebraska wants to do offensively. But I don't think that Dylan Raiola is like unprepared or not ready for this moment, because this isn't the first like big game that he's played in. He's done it already. And when he was on that stage before, I thought he responded really nicely to it. So maybe he hasn't quite had that breakout because Nebraska ended up losing that game to Illinois when he played well. So this could be the opportunity for that.
Okay. Other side of the ball, Indiana offense versus Nebraska defense. Just like a note on the Nebraska defense, they held Colorado to 10 points and 260 yards. Colorado in its other 5 games have scored 31, 28, 31, 48, and 28. So I don't know if we knew it at the time, but in hindsight, that was a pretty awesome defensive performance, right? That I think you have to contextualize that when they're playing a very solid offense like this. And by the way, we'll give it away if you didn't watch our Wednesday show. Our first team All-North quarterback was Shadur Sanders from Colorado that Nebraska kind of limited in that game. And our second team quarterback was Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback they're facing now. But that was good defense.
I think Nebraska's defense is very good. How good it is has probably not been discussed enough. Nebraska's flown a little under the radar here because it lost the game and then people just kind of stopped paying attention, I think. But this is one of the better defenses in the country, in my opinion, that Indiana is about to face. This is by far Indiana's offense's toughest test.
Yeah,
I think so, by a wide margin.
Secondary, Tommy Hill, one of their starting corners, got hurt against Illinois and didn't play against Rutgers or Purdue, but Matt Rule thinks he'll be back, so that's a big deal. And then Sayer Wright, who played for him, was awesome the last couple weeks. And they still have Marcus Buford. So, like, it's one of those things where an injury sort of created an opportunity. It's like, oh, we have some actual depth here. So, like, their secondary should be in a pretty good shape for Nebraska. And then Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson on the defensive line have been really good. And I am super intrigued to see them against the interior of the Indiana offensive line, right?
Yeah, I think it's a huge game for Mike Kadick and Drew Evans and Bray Lynch, the 3 guys on the interior of Indiana's line, because they've been really good this year. Like Indiana, I guess you have nothing else to go off of other than PFF grades when you're trying to make this comparison, has had one of the best offensive lines in the country so far. Pass blocking, run blocking, they've just been really good. They've protected Curtis Rourke. They've got a great stable of running backs that do it by committee. That's the thing that stood out the most about Indiana's offense as I was looking through some stuff. Like, there are so many guys to account for. Like, there's not really there's not what I would call like a definite go-to guy on the offense, right? I think they spread the ball around throwing it. They spread it around running it.
Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton, and Kalen Black combined, their top 3 backs, 26 carries per game, 150 rushing yards per game, 5.7 yards per carry. And they all were talking this week about how much they love the offensive line. So that's proof of, like, it's not some dude behind a mediocre line who's having to make 6 cuts every play. It's like the offensive line is getting a push, and they have multiple guys who can take advantage of that. So that run game is really solid. Like, when you get really, really inside the numbers, the Nebraska rush defense and the Indiana rush offense is more middle of the pack than like the raw numbers will tell you. So I did note that front 7 havoc rate, which is your defensive front 7 guys like making splash plays. Nebraska is 27th in the nation in that, which is pretty good. And then Indiana as an offense, where they rank in limiting front 7 havoc plays, is 15th. So we're talking about this again, the matchup stuff here, right? Nebraska has a group that maybe can stop the run, but Indiana bunch of guys who want to run it. Nebraska's secondary might be getting better, and Curtis Rourke has been as efficient and effective as basically any quarterback in the country. Indiana in the red zone, they are number 6 in touchdown percentage in the nation in the red zone. They score touchdowns 81% of the time in the red zone. Nebraska's defense is number 18 in holding down touchdowns in the red zone. They only give up 46% of touchdowns in the red zone. So it's another thing here where we're butting heads, Landis. What somebody does well, somebody else is pretty good at stopping. I think this might be one of these where Indiana has to run a little bit. I don't know. Indiana's pretty good at everything, and Nebraska's kind of pretty good at sort of stopping everything. And it's sort of what we said. Like, we're fired up for this game because the more you dig into it, the more you want to see what happens, because there's a lot of pretty good against pretty good in this entire matchup.
The Joe Moore Award on October 10th put out like a mid-season honor roll.
Okay.
And I don't believe Indiana's offensive line was on it. And that is a massive oversight, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This group has been awesome. And if they play well and Indiana runs the ball well and they protect Curtis Rourke in this game, I would have them up there among the best offensive lines in the country.
Indiana as a team averages 5.1 yards per run. That's 35th in the nation. Nebraska gives up 2.7 yards per rush. That's 4th in the nation. Nebraska limited Kyle Monungai to 19 carries, 78 yards, 4.1 yards per carry in the Rutgers game. That was a big deal. There's a lot of strength versus strength here, Landis. So let's get to the picks. Who are you taking in this one?
I'm taking Indiana. I have a little higher scoring game, 31-24 for Indiana. I just think they're so balanced. And you make a good point about some of the underlying numbers with the rushing attack not stacking up quite as well as the just sort of raw accumulation of yards and yards per carry, that kind of stuff, which is super important to keep in mind when analyzing this matchup. But I just kind of believe in what Indiana's doing offensively. I think it'll find enough at home to put up 31 here. And I think we do get a nice game from Dylan Raiola. I just don't know that it'll be quite enough to overcome that. Nebraska's balanced as well on offense. So like both these teams are coming in, I think, maybe equipped to win this game no matter what kind of form it sort of takes on. Like if it's a lower scoring defensive kind of game, I think both these teams are equipped to win that. If it does get a little more offensive oriented, I think Indiana has more. So with that in mind, I will pick Indiana 31-24.
And I almost didn't want to pick this game because I kind of just want to watch it, and I feel bad picking against either of them. But I'm going to take Nebraska 21-20.
Okay.
Both these teams have trips to Ohio State left on its schedule. I think this is a borderline playoff eliminator. I think the winner here comes out in good shape to be at the edge of the playoff discussion. Because at this point, I think you still assume losses to Ohio State for both these teams. So Nebraska already has a loss. Indiana doesn't. But, you know, it's a huge game. I think it's a monumental, Zach and I called it a monumental game for Nebraska because Nebraska goes to Ohio State next week. The difference between Nebraska with just one loss, having handed Indiana its first loss, going to Columbus, there's a lot of momentum to that. Whereas if it's like, well, they've lost Illinois, they lost Indiana, now they're going to Ohio State and they still have to play Iowa. Like, what do you think these guys are going to do? I guess they'll get to a bowl, but it's not that. It's a huge swing game for Nebraska. And of course, Indiana's having a magical season. They've played great. They're well coached. They're overachieving. They're 6-0. But I think it's a bigger swing game for Nebraska.
I think it's a bigger swing game for Nebraska too. But it would mean a whole heck of a lot for Indiana to win this game. To get the spotlight that's on it and to get like the kind of crowd that it's going to get. It's just it's a huge moment for proof of concept, I think, for Kurt Cignetti, and he'll have more. So it's not like this is like make or break necessarily, but this is the first time I think Indiana's really had that with him at the helm. Also, Indiana only team in the country that hasn't trailed in a game yet this year. So we'll see if that transpires, how the Hoosiers handle a new reality within a game.
We told people to watch Nebraska Rutgers. I don't know if people are like, watch this. Like, you got it. That was 14-7. That was an interesting football game. But you got to watch this. It's at noon. Go watch it. All right.
Noon on Fox. Yep.
Oh, it's big noon, right? Are Joel and Gus doing it?
That's actually a great question. I think they are. Yeah.
So this is one of those, like, this is again, BYU had this moment last week. Big noon went there. Gus and Joel did the game. BYU withstood the spotlight. Now it's Indiana's time. So like this is a real thing. I absolutely think it is a real thing for programs who don't get as much spotlight. What happens when you're in it? Can you handle it? So super curious to see how that happens. All right. When we come back, we'll run through our last few games and then do our fantasy picks for the Dragon statue next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. If you want to give us a thumbs up, if you want to subscribe on YouTube, tell a friend, give us a review on your podcast platform, a rating, whatever. We're super appreciative for it. We're over, as usual. Let's go fast. UCF at Iowa State. Iowa State's about a 2-touchdown favorite. Saturday night, 7:30. Landis, what you got?
It's the 4th straight night game for Iowa State. They're playing a lot of night games. UCF is on a 3-game losing streak to Colorado, Florida, and Cincinnati, and now doesn't know who its quarterback is because it benched KJ Jefferson, and I guess like Ja'Curry Brown might start for this game against Iowa State. UCF is not. I was like, I kept mentioning UCF when we talked about the Big 12. Like, yeah, don't forget about UCF. Don't forget about UCF. They stink.
You can forget. Yeah,
you can forget. So Iowa State's looking to go 7-0, as you said. They want a fast start. I think like Matt Campbell was talking about playing like a 60-minute football game. They didn't quite play that against West Virginia. Definitely didn't play it against Baylor when they got down early. It has trailed in the first half of its last 2 games and also trailed in the half against Iowa. So this maybe is an opportunity for Iowa State to work through some of that. I have it a little lower scoring just because
me too.
Iowa State plays just like low possession games, but I don't know that Iowa State has really any struggles here. I have them winning 28-10.
I have 30-6. I think it's a sit on them game for Iowa State. I just think they smother them. Arizona State at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's about a 5-point favorite. This is a noon game on Saturday. Arizona State's going to be without starting quarterback Sam Levitt, who got hurt in the last game. They're starting Jeff Sims, the former Georgia Tech and Nebraska quarterback. The line opened at Cincinnati -2.5 and has moved actually to 5.5. I think mostly based on that news. Arizona State's coming off a win where they stormed the field against Utah and their quarterback's hurt. Cam Scatteraboo is still a guy that everybody's excited about. He rushes for 129 yards per game. That's 5th in the nation for Arizona State. I don't know, man. Give me the Bearcats. I just think there's going to be air let out of the balloon. And I think Jeff Sims is not very good. And I think Brendan Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback, is good. So give me the 4-2 Bearcats getting to 5-2. I got them 26-16.
Yeah, I'll take Cincinnati as well. I have 24-20. Another low possession game. I think Arizona State. If Arizona State attempts a pass, I might be surprised in this game.
Yeah,
I think they're just going to try to run it. So I don't think it's going to be especially high scoring. But I like the Bearcats. I like the way they're playing, and it's a long trip and an early kickoff for Arizona State. So give me Cincinnati.
Terrible spot for Arizona State, especially without their good quarterback. UCLA at Rutgers, Bill. It's also a noon game. Rutgers favored by about 4.5. 9 a.m. body clock for the Bruins.
Yep. First time these teams have ever played. The second time in 3 weeks, by the way, that UCLA is playing a 9 a.m. body clock game. I don't know that it affected them a whole lot at Penn State. They actually started off quite well in that game and ended up losing 27-11, which is a really weird score. Rutgers will not have Sam Brown. He's out for the year. He injured his knee last week.
Terrible.
We don't yet know. So Tyreen Powell didn't play. Robert Longerbeam didn't play. Aaron Lewis and Flip Dixon were both injured in that game last week. Greg Schiano said we're not in a great spot with our health right now, which is like the understatement of the year. But he didn't give any really updates on those guys aside from Sam Brown, who's out for the year. So I guess we'll know more on Saturday when we get the availability report. One thing to note is that UCLA, for all of its struggles, has been very good against the run this year. Held Penn State to 5 rushing yards without Nick Singleton. Held Minnesota to 41 rushing yards last week. Still lost both those games, but its run defense has been good. I'm still picking Rutgers despite being potentially shorthanded defensively. I'm picking them 20-13, but I think this could be a little bit of a slog.
20-12, because we like to pick almost the same scores. At least Rutgers knows they're hurt. Last week, it was like they had some late scratches before the game, and then guys got hurt in the game, and it was just attrition. Give Schiano a week and to know what he has, and I believe in them. The Sam Brown loss is huge. He was the guy who blew my mind a couple of weeks ago as the backup to Kyle Monungai. Was so effective, and now Monungai is going to have to carry it 20 times probably. So like be on the lookout for that, especially against a decent run defense, as you said. All right, this is a not exciting one, but it's a northern team. Houston at Kansas. This is a Saturday 3:30 game. Kansas is favored by about 5.5. And again, this is one of the change quarterback situations. Houston had gotten shut out in consecutive games by Cincinnati and Iowa State, and they benched Donovan Smith for Zion Chris, who when I was Googling his name, it kept coming up Zion Christmas. And I was like, I'm not trying to search for Christmas. I'm trying to search for the Houston quarterback. So last week, in their last game against TCU, he was 15 of 18 for 141, and he ran it 11 times for 97. So he did give them a boost. It got them their first Big 12 win. Both teams are coming off a bye, and I'm just telling you, if Kansas doesn't win this one, they are staring down the barrel of a 10-game losing streak because they're 0-3 in the Big 12. After this, they have Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU, Colorado. Those might be the 4 best teams in the Big 12. Those are their 4 next games. And then they finish with Baylor, who is tied for last with Kansas right now at 0-3 in the Big 12. This is another one. This is a little bit like Boston College. They have to win this game. They have to win this game. So, like, are they going to win? All I'm telling you is Kansas has to win. They were picked 4th in the preseason poll. They're 0-3. If they don't win this, they might be 0-8 before they get to the end of the regular season in the Big 12. Kobe Bryant, their first team all Big 12 corner, got hurt in the Arizona State game. Did not take any practice team reps last week. Like, it doesn't sound great for him. But the good news is the AP preseason basketball poll came out Monday, and Kansas was number 1. So I don't know if Kansas fans, they're very accustomed to this kind of thing. And then Lance Leipold got there, and it's like, hey, Kansas is good as football too. Maybe they're not. If they lose this one, I think it is pull the curtains onto basketball season and see if Kansas can avoid 1-11. They have to win. So I'm picking them to win 27-0, 3rd shutout by a Northern team against Houston. Let's go, Lance Leipold of the Jayhawks.
Is this game at Arrowhead?
Yes.
Okay. I actually watched a decent amount of that Houston TCU game. I couldn't tell you why. But I watched it.
Why? Oh my God.
I think it was like a Thursday night game or something. Maybe there was something else on. I don't know. I was watching it. I thought their offense looked pretty good. Certainly, it's hard to look worse than not scoring, but I thought they looked pretty good. TCU's not any good either. I just have no belief in Kansas. Like, I don't like the way Leipold has described their struggles this year, which is like, we're really close. Like, it's like, no, you've been playing terrible football all year. Like,
yeah,
I don't get the sense of urgency I'd like to hear from Kansas about getting this thing turned around. They were off, so maybe they figured some things out, and Lance Leipold's playing things a little close to the vest, but I'm not going to believe in that until I see it. So I'm picking Houston by a point, 28-27.
I love this. Again, Doug and Bill picking the same thing. We both picked Kansas to score 27. It's just that Bill picked Houston to score 28, and I picked Houston to score 0. Yeah. So we shall see. All right, Notre Dame at Georgia Tech, Saturday, 3:30. Notre Dame about a 2-touchdown favorite in this one, Landis.
Yeah, this game is in Atlanta. They're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I guess it would have been in Atlanta either way, but it's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and not at Georgia Tech's home field. We talked, I think, briefly during the week. Notre Dame announced that cornerback Ben Morrison is out for the year. You can add him to the list of players that Notre Dame has lost for the year with offensive lineman Charles Jagusaw and Ashton Craig, and defensive ends Jordan Botello and Boubacar Traore. Like, awful injury luck for Notre Dame this year. And like, it's not, you never want to see injuries anywhere, but it is especially unfortunate for Notre Dame, who I think feels like it is starting to get some things figured out offensively. And now it has defensive players dropping, losing its best guy in the secondary and 2, I think, pretty good pass rushers from their front. So it's got to find a way to navigate that. I thought Riley Leonard actually threw the ball in a pretty impressive way last week against Stanford. Like, he threw it in a way that kind of got my attention. Okay. And I was reading Pete Sampson at The Athletic wrote an article after the game. It was like, this is what Notre Dame envisioned for Riley Leonard when they brought him into this program. He was like ripping some RPO throws. He was still running the ball. So I want to see that continue to build here. I think Georgia Tech's a pretty solid team. They're 5-2, back-to-back wins against Duke and UNC. We know they beat Florida State. It can really run the ball, so it'll be a test for Notre Dame's run defense, but I think it'll be up to answering that test, and I think Notre Dame will be able to run it. I just want to see the Riley Leonard passing kind of progression continue a little bit. So I have Notre Dame winning 27-17.
I have Notre Dame 35-21. USC at Maryland. Saturday, 4 p.m. USC favored by about a touchdown. Defensive end Anthony Lucas out for the season for USC, which stinks. Mike Loxley is going to continue to call plays for the rest of the year. He took over the play calling last week from Josh Gaddis. He said he just basically wants to be the voice in Billy Edwards, the quarterback, in his helmet. So it's that I took over last Friday, this is a quote, in an effort to create the processes that allow us to maybe sustain a few drives here or there, but it's collaborative. Josh Gaddis is the offensive coordinator. I'll continue to be the voice to Billy. So that's there. I think they're on tilt a little bit. And Mike Loxley said he also made some other changes. Quote, we've had some challenges in the first half of the season, and as a result, I've made some tough decisions and significant moves internally. As you guys know, when I make moves internally, I don't like to talk about them. These are things that are in-house. I think I've earned the right to be able to make these decisions and changes at all the different levels. So I don't know what that means, and I don't know what we're going to see. But to me, this is the perfect spot for Lincoln Riley, who is 5-8 in his last 13 games, to come drop a beat down on Maryland and then puff his chest out like it meant something. So I have USC 48-17 in the least meaningful result of the weekend. Yeah, congratulations, USC. You went to the East Coast, and they're like, see, all this travel doesn't matter. Okay, whatever. You couldn't beat Michigan. You couldn't beat Minnesota. You couldn't beat Penn State. And Lincoln Riley is going to take it out on reeling Maryland. Absolutely. Watch for the puffery. The peacock putting out his feathers and strutting around. What do I like better for Lincoln Riley, Bambi or the peacock? Oh, take that. Take that, Maryland. You like that, you turtles? Great. 48-17 USC.
I have USC 31-21, and this might be the most juiceless game we've talked about this year. Just such a weird matchup with where both of these teams are, and USC coming clear across the country to play in it. But yeah, I think USC, if it has the opportunity to hammer Maryland, it definitely will.
Absolutely will. Colorado at Arizona. This is actually a pretty interesting game. Arizona, -3, Saturday, 4 p.m. Landis.
Yeah, so Colorado had some injuries against Kansas State. Armarian Miller is out for the year, unfortunately. Receiver
stinks.
I think it was an ankle injury that he suffered in that game, so he's out for the year. Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. are expected to play. Deion Sanders was pretty emphatic about those two guys being back for this game. Every game Travis Hunter plays is interesting.
Yes.
But this is especially interesting because when he's on offense, he will go up at times against Takario Davis, the Arizona cornerback, who's pretty good. And then when he's on defense, I would imagine he will just follow Tetairoa McMillan around the field the entire time. Yeah. So just like watch him watch Travis Hunter the whole game. It is an interesting game. Like these two teams played a pretty high scoring game last year. I expect it to be a pretty high scoring game this year. I will say, just because I was talking about it prior to the Kansas State game, I would like to retract anything nice I said about Colorado's improving rushing attack after Dallin Hayden had 11 yards on 7 carries, and Isaiah Augustive had 10 yards on 3 carries, and Shadur Sanders lost 50 yards rushing when you include the sacks. So I think the rumors of an improved run game were grossly overstated by me. So I think it just becomes two teams throwing the ball around the yard, and it should be pretty fun. I have Colorado 35-31.
And I have the exact same score, basically 33-31. I don't know how we continue to do this. TCU at Utah. This is a late game on Saturday night at 10:30. Utah -4 in this one. Cam Rising done for the year. They're finally going officially all the way to Isaac Wilson. And Kyle Whittingham admitted that could be good. He was sort of asked, hey, like, finally knowing for sure who your quarterback is, could that help? He said, there's some merit to that, not having the uncertainty. But, Cam Rising is a great football player. We just tried to do everything we could to give him the best opportunities to make plays. And if that meant a little bit of uncertainty during the week, okay. But now that it is cleared up, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
You think?
I mean, so I am actually expecting, God, it's so weird. I have 27-17 Utah. You have 24-17 Utah. What is wrong with us? Are there only just like 4 football scores that people can pick? And that's why you and I pick the same scores every week?
Yeah.
Because you look at the facts and you kind of figure out, it's like a mid-scoring game. Okay, a mid-scoring 10-point game. What do you expect? Okay. So we basically have the same score here. Here's the thing. I actually am like waiting for like, oh, wait, Utah's good again. I think this could be like that reaction to this. Isaac Wilson, Utah State, 20 of 33, 230, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1 sack. People are like, oh, Isaac Wilson, maybe he should actually play. Oklahoma State, 17 of 29, 207, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 2 sacks. Okay, maybe we want Cam Rising back. Arizona, 20 of 40, half his passes, 280, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 3 sacks. People are like, please bring the limping 7th-year guy back in. So he got worse the more he played, but I still think there might be a decent quarterback in there. And last week, Cam Rising got sacked twice and threw 3 picks and completed fewer than 50% of his passes. So it can't be worse than their loss to Arizona State last week. So they're on a 2-game losing streak. It's super weird. TCU's defense is not very good. I think this is actually like an actual Utah bounce back and like a nice 10-point win, like a kind of convincing 10-point win.
I think Utah can still salvage something. I agree with that. I would like to know what the practice situation was when they were dressing Cam Rising and he wasn't playing, and then Isaac Wilson was starting. Like, were they splitting reps in practice in a way that wasn't really benefiting anybody? So I'm excited for Kyle Whittingham's team to overcome the quarterback adversity that he created. So that'll be good.
Clip it. All right, couple Kramit games, couple G5 games. Let's just make the picks on these, Landis, because I think we gave everybody everything they needed with Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, Tennessee before. Alabama, Tennessee, Bama -3, Saturday at 3:30. I'm taking Tennessee 27-23.
Oh, interesting. I'm taking Alabama 24-21 because I think maybe Jalen Milroe has one more explosive play in him than Nico Iamaleava does.
Okay.
Tennessee's defense, I think, is legit good. Alabama's front, I think, is legit good. And while its secondary is vulnerable, I don't know that Tennessee can take advantage of it. So I think it's a lower scoring game. It seems like you tend to agree. So I have Bama by a field goal.
And I have Tennessee by 4. Next game, Georgia at Texas. This is 7:30. This line keeps going bigger. It's to Texas -5 at this point. I have Texas 37-24. Let's just stop. We just could have one person do the show. We could alternate each week. Why do we need 2 people to say the exact same thing and pick the exact same score?
I have 38-24. I got one more point for the Longhorns than you do. Isaiah Bond, I guess, is like questionable to play, but he will play for Texas. And Tate Ratledge, the really good guard for Georgia, who was hurt in the Kentucky game and got tightrope surgery, was upgraded to questionable. So I don't think he's going to play.
Okay.
But if he does, that could maybe make Georgia's offensive line a little better. Georgia's like slightly banged up, I think, too, at other spots. So, but even with that, like, Texas is just better. So Texas, I think, will win this game comfortably.
All the shoving. No wonder they're banged up. They're just shoving everywhere. Like, oh, I was finally getting healthy. I got shoved. All right, 2 G5 games. The first one I call the what is game, and the second one is the what could have been game. The first one, Landis, is Western Michigan at Buffalo.
Yep. I have Buffalo, which is like blown up the MAC title race by beating Northern Illinois the week after it beat Notre Dame and then beat preseason conference favorite Toledo last week. I guess it would make sense for Buffalo to then lose this game, right? So I have Western Michigan winning 38-35.
I had Buffalo originally and then changed my mind after I dug into the game a little bit more. The Buffalo offense is awful. In adjusted EPA per play, it's 133rd. And Hayden Wolf, the Western Michigan quarterback, is pretty good. He's number 25 in quarterback rating in the entire FBS level. 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, 70% completion. So I thought Buffalo initially, and I will say, shout out to Tishu. Every now and then I will blindly follow Tishu. One of his preseason things was Buffalo over 5.5 wins. And I was like, I don't know anything about Buffalo, but okay. So I bet it, and they're 4-2. So like, this is like Tishu was on Buffalo, but these 2 teams are tied with Ohio for first place in the MAC at 2-0.
Yep.
So to your point, like these teams have been winning the games. Buffalo was blown out by Missouri and UConn, but to your point, they beat Toledo and Northern Illinois. Western Michigan hung with Wisconsin in week 1, got blown out by Ohio State. They were tied in the 4th quarter with Marshall and lost by 7. And then they've beaten Ball State and Akron. So like, this is a game for first place in the MAC, which is why we're talking about it.
Yeah, Buffalo's got a pretty good defense, at least statistically. Like, it's been good, but yeah, the offense is not great. But I never know what to make of comparative statistics early on in MAC play when they're so influenced by these teams playing Power 5 opponents, right? So I don't know. I think it'll be a good game that Western Michigan wins. And
then the what could have been game, Toledo at Northern Illinois. This is a 3:30 start on Saturday. Northern Illinois is favored by 3. Since beating Mississippi State, Toledo lost to Western Kentucky, beat Miami of Ohio, and lost to Buffalo. Since beating Notre Dame, Northern Illinois lost to Buffalo in overtime, lost to NC State, beat UMass, and beat Bowling Green. Both these teams are 4-2 and 1-1 in conference play, and I'll take Toledo 24-21.
I have Northern Illinois 24-20. I actually think Northern Illinois is maybe the best team in the MAC, and perhaps we'll start showing it now that we're fully in to conference play. So yeah, give me Northern Illinois.
All right, couple MAC games to watch. Now to the Dragon statue. We did not do a video this week because at some point people don't want us watch videos of us trading the dragon statue, but we traded it because you took it back from me after last week.
We sure did. It was a competitive week though. I thought we both made some solid picks. I had Avery Johnson and Emeka Egbuka. Avery Johnson got me a little over 20. Emeka Egbuka had 22.3 points. You had Jake Retzlaff, BYU quarterback, and Jalen Knoll, the Iowa State wide receiver. Both had decent weeks. So this was, I think, the second closest margin we've had so far this year. So it wasn't a bad week for either of us. I was just the smarter man this week. So I get the dragon statue.
So he gets the dragon. I do miss the dragon when it's not here, because when the dragon's not here, it's just a Georgia hat sitting on my bookshelf. And that is the Georgia hat is like a complimentary piece. It is not I'm not trading the Georgia hat. We are not playing for the Georgia hat. Can you imagine if you had to put this on? I'd be like, hey, Landis, put the Georgia hat on. All right. What are your picks this week, Landis?
So I'm piggybacking off of your Jake Retzlaff pick from last week, and I'm picking him this week against Oklahoma State, because as we previously discussed, Oklahoma State stinks. And I'm taking Jordan James, the Oregon running back, against Purdue, because even if that's a weird spot for Oregon, Purdue's defense is not very good, and teams have really run the ball on them this year. So give me Jordan James. I have a big game in West Lafayette.
Who would have thought beginning of the year that we were going to have back-to-back weeks of picking Jake Retzlaff? What a wonderful thing college football is. All right, my fantasy picks for this week. I'm going to go with Arizona State being a turd against Cincinnati, and I'm taking Brendan Sorsby, who has thrown for 13 touchdowns this year for Cincinnati. Really good. And then I am picking Kansas last gasp. Let's do something. Running back Devin Neal, who's run for 584 yards this year, 5 touchdowns. He's a good back, Landis. And I think this is off a bye, right? This is a last chance for Kansas to figure anything out. And if I was Kansas and I was trying to figure something out offensively, I would start with Devin Neal. So let's see if he does something.
It's not a bad thought. I think Kansas's new offensive identity coming out of its off week needs to be Devin Neal touches the ball 30 times, and let's see what happens. Right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. So I want that statue back. We shall see what happens. We will be back on Saturday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. We will be talking about what happened in Michigan, Illinois. We will be talking about what happened in Nebraska, Indiana. I always write down all the games. The late games that might be ending right as we're getting that show started are Iowa, Michigan State, Kansas State, West Virginia, Central Florida, Iowa State, and then also, of course, Georgia, Texas, which sometimes we talk about Georgia on this show, right? So we will.
I wonder if you'll discuss what happens in those SEC games on this. On the Saturday night show.
It depends who wins. I don't think we're going to do 20 minutes on what a game by Georgia. That is a dominating comeback performance. The shove changed their season. So if Georgia wins, we might spend 15 seconds on it. If Georgia gets throttled, we might spend 15 minutes on it. But we do have some good Northern games, and there could be some defining stuff here, especially in that Indiana-Nebraska game. So we'll see you guys live on YouTube on Saturday night. Friday morning, T. Shu and I making our best bets on Bets of the North. We're 5-2 on the $500 real money bets. We are up more than $1,800 from our starting $5,000 bankroll on the year. So we have a good time. We already recorded that, and I danced. So if that helps at all, I danced like a mermaid. So go watch that show on Friday morning.
I don't even know what that could possibly mean. Dance like a mermaid. So I'm excited to see that.
You're just so happy that I danced like a mermaid with T-Shu and not with you. So like T-Shu is like, I can't believe I do one show a week with this guy and I get this, and Landis does 5 shows a week and he avoids it. So I'll give you a little piece of it Saturday night, depending if things go well, depending how drunk, how fake drunk I feel. All right. Thanks as always to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good and running through a million graphics. We appreciate you guys for being here. Otherwise we'd just be 2 strange men shouting into a microphone. For Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.